we will have to talk about this a little bit. General Montgomery Day is outside. I'm sure that's not gonna be an issue for a volume of people. The Maybrook Senior Center, with COVID, they do have like 50 people can be in. So Max and I were talking a little bit about how we can do maybe sign up and that night we are splitting between the Walden Firehouse. So maybe we can juggle, only half of us will be there, so we're gonna have to juggle either line up outside and come in one or two at a time, but we're gonna have to limit the people in there.
Our initial thoughts is to have stations, right? So we'll try and make a lot of stations. We'll come up with 8 to 10 stations, and then we can let in 8 to 10 groups of people at a time. They'll each be at their station. And when I say groups, I mean people that are together. So if a husband and wife comes together, that's a group. I don't think we can mix like people that aren't riding together. And then they go through the stations and interact with the committee people at the stations, and then when they leave, we can let another person in.
So on September 16th, you have Maybrook and Walden at
Yes.
the same time?
Yes, so we'll split up.
Well, if you're gonna have 8 to 10 stations, we're not gonna have enough people.
We will fill in the gaps if we need to send extra people. So I think the committee is 9, right? So we need to come up with 7. Sarah and me is 11. I can get Bonnie here, that's 12. And so we need to come up with 4 more. Let's see, we can get those people out.
Plus Megan, if we can ask Megan to help.
Megan is on, by the way, she's dialed in, taking minutes for us. So that's, at least our dates are confirmed. We know we have Walden and Maybrook on the 16th. The Coldenham Firehouse, I did ask Joe if he could give me what's their stipulation for COVID, so I don't have that back yet, but we'll all be there that night. We'll just have to figure out, same thing, how many people we can let in and we'll go.
And that's going to be the most difficult one to run, is the Coldenham one, because that's the one that we usually do group breakouts. And we don't want to, even with people wearing masks, have them piled around the same table necessarily. So we'll have to figure out how we're gonna work that. And also see how the pace of this pause goes. And if we're still at whatever level we are now, which is pretty safe, versus if things start to heat up again toward the end of summer.
So we'll have to continually discuss this over the next couple of meetings, make sure we're all prepared and what we'll have to do. Our locations are secured. So before I turn it over to Max, we just wanted to touch base. I know you got an email from me and Max today apologizing for the documents being late. Max has been pretty swamped. You read his email as to why things were a little bit late. Better job to make sure everything's out there on Friday night before this meeting. Today, it is a little late when you got them, but Max is prepared for that tonight with
Yeah,
the
I mean,
items he has to present.
I do apologize. The items that we're gonna be discussing tonight are a follow-on from what we were discussing last meeting. So we're really continuing discussion of the survey, and then I wanted to discuss the priority preservation and zoning reconsideration parcels, and continue that discussion tonight. We did give you the scenic and historic INA, which Mary Ellen helped us edit and correct. And we also incorporated the results of your initial scenic identification from last meeting. We put those results in there as well. So, but we're not gonna discuss that tonight because we just got that today. So, that will be on for next week. If you have any questions, you can raise it. In 2 weeks. As usual, if anybody has anything they want to discuss regarding the INA reports you've already received, we'd love to hear input. If not, we can move right into the draft survey discussion again. Oh, yeah, that's right, thank you.
So we do have one more piece to get everybody to keep us on track with our schedule, because we were set to finish in December. We had a conversation with Mary Beth, and they're trying to coordinate their dates with ours to make sure they get us information that we can use timely. So we believe instead of December being that final meeting, we will be in January, so that we can get that information and be able to use it. And
So what we asked them to do is so we're gonna have public meetings in September, and we're going to try and arrive at a vision in October. And we want you to have the benefit of any information they develop as part of that corridor plan to consider when you're making your vision. So we asked them to move up their deliverables in terms of market analysis, especially, to October, so that this committee could look at their data before you guys start visioning. Now, they're not gonna have their analysis, they're not gonna have their build outs, they're not gonna have their concept plans, any of that done until, closer to the end of the year. And because of that, we also are asking, we asked the supervisor, if it made sense to move the final meeting back to January, because to us, it made a lot of sense for you guys to be able to see that report before you issue the final recommendation on the CPC. Because you may see something in there that makes you want to edit or provide additional comment in the comp plan itself. So we didn't want that document to come out after you guys have already recommended something to the town board.
But they're a separate entity, like the IDA is coming up with, that's their project, right? When I asked for the supervisor to have collaboration between the town board, especially this group, the IDA, the planning board, I was told no, that they're a separate entity, and that they're afforded that privilege, I'm lacking the word, but.
They are a separate entity, but
This is supposed to be a separate document from us, right?
it is a separate document from you.
Right.
But it wouldn't make sense for that document to be delivered after you've provided your draft, because the comprehensive plan is the document that controls land use.
Yeah.
And every zoning law in the town has to be consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Right.
So if you were to issue your comprehensive plan draft before the IDA issues their corridor report, then the town board is considering the CPC's draft plan and trying to reconcile any information that comes out of that report at the town board level. It makes sense for this committee, who's gonna be more in the INA, public visioning, analysis, development of policy process here, to be able to look at that same report before you make your recommendations to the town board, so that your recommendations already have considered what that report comes out with. That way, it's not up to the town board to say, okay, here's this comp plan that we got from the CPC, here's some information we got from the IDA, and how does this blend? Instead, the CPC will look at how does this information impact the plan.
Okay, so it gives us the power to decide what we want in our town.
Correct.
Okay.
It's not leaving the coordination of that information, because remember, it's an informational report. It's not a policy report. It doesn't have any control over zoning. It may have some recommendations in it. But it's really about where the market is and where the highest and best use is in this corridor are. So if in the comprehensive plan, we come out with some recommendations that say, and I'll just, go in a complete direction where I don't think we're gonna end up. But let's say, we say strip shopping is great along the Route 17 corridor, and their report says there's absolutely no market from it, well, this CPC should be able to then amend their recommendation and say, well, okay, there's no market for it, why are we recommending this? So that's the point of getting you the market information as early as possible, because I think that's the most important deliverable. Because it's nothing that we're giving you build out analysis, we're giving you on a broader scale. They're sort of drilling in more. So I think that's the most important item. And then I think the final report you should be able to review before you recommend your draft.
And I think the moratorium expires what, March?
March or April, we were just talking.
April.
Because
Yeah.
we need time after after the comp plan is done to update the zoning, which is also gonna take time. If that's what the direction of this goes, that we do need to update zoning,
Yeah.
we're gonna
Did it
need
for a
time to
year
do that
or-
We
also.
did it for 6 months, and we are gonna talk about it at the board meeting, because obviously we're
Coming up
new
on
it,
the
and
public
we'll
Right, so you go.
coordinate the dates to make sure that it ends when this ends.
Because I think that's why we were on such a push schedule, was because we were told by council that the moratorium's only for a year.
Well-
Like, and then you start worrying about
It's also because when DEC amended their regulations to require scoping even for generic EISs, that added 2 months to the process of approving a comprehensive plan, which is, so, you know, an 8-month CPC deliverable used to come with a 10-month adoption. Now an 8-month CPC delivery comes with a 12-month adoption. So really, I think what we got is a little bit reprieve to get to month 13 with the adoption, which means delivery of your draft document in month 9. And, you know, I think probably there's going to be potentially the ramp up of the zoning effort, depending on how receptive the town board is to your draft of that zoning, also in month 9 or 10. So when you deliver your draft, if the town board likes that draft generally, and it just has to go through the approval process, you can begin drafting the zoning at that point.
Will the IDA also be considering our plan in their recommendations for their document? Like, we're taking their information in, are they also taking our draft plan in, or?
I don't know, I mean, we're sharing information, so, because it makes sense. So we're sharing all our information with that process. But it's sort of a more facts-based report. It's more of an informational report than a policy document. So I don't know that they need I mean, you guys are developing a policy, a land use policy.
Their recommendations, though, are not going to be facts-based. They're going to say, based on these facts, we recommend that this course of action be pursued.
They're not gonna have the public engagement.
Right.
Yeah, but they have no juice to set the zoning.
Yeah, so.
Right.
So
Their report,
Or the next to find us.
yeah, I mean, their report has to go, they don't set the zoning, all they do is right, provide incentives. And they have to act consistent to your comprehensive plan.
Right.
So, it's as a governmental entity or a quasi-governmental entity, right? They have to act consistent to your comp plan.
I guess what I'm getting at is if their recommendations for development types are outside of our recommendations for zoning changes, there's going to be a conflict in the documents that we have an opportunity to resolve before they finalize their document.
So,
They have an opportunity to choose to resolve before they finalize their document.
it's more important for you guys.
Their document is.
Yeah,
Right.
it's
Yeah,
more,
ours isn't going to the board.
one has to come
Adopted.
before, right? So one has to be the chicken and one has to be the egg. So,
I mean, I guess.
Yeah.
It is what it is, right? I just don't want the IDA to waste $100,000 on a document that's not going to mean anything. That's all I'm getting at. Like,
I think it is.
Will they have a chance to incorporate our information into their final document?
So-
Is what I was asking.
you know,
I think
talking,
it's the other way around.
We
We will
want
take their
theirs.
information and try to incorporate it into our document.
yes.
Or we can choose to, or not to,
Or
choose
not
not
to.
to write it
Yeah.
into our document, because
Yeah.
we're going to
It's
have
up
to
to
deal with
us.
consequences.
And the best deliverable again is gonna be the market information. because that's something we're not giving you. We're not giving you any sort of assessment of what the market is demanding right now. So that's going to be a help for you in, you know, developing your land use policies. And then you'll see their recommendations and their information, and you can decide, we like what we have, we're gonna stick with it, or you could say, okay, well, we wanna change a couple things, or that's a good idea, or we disagree, or maybe just provide some comment on it to provide along to the town board. That's another way that you can react, is say, we like what we have, we're gonna send it as is, but we wanna comment as a CPC on some of these other things. So, but that only happens is if you have it before you do your recommended plan.
So that all being said, we will be looking to set one more meeting in January, which will get approved at the town board, because I want to add that to our schedule. So we will have one additional meeting that we didn't quite count on.
And are you guys going to share with us the discussions with Delaware Engineering then, or?
That was the discussion, the scheduling and the piece that they're gonna deliver to, and when we would be ready for it.
So the discussions I've had with Delaware Engineering so far has been, I interfaced with them on the sewer and water
Right,
plan.
that was separate, right?
And trying to coordinate their deliverables and our deliverables, because they're actually looking for our initial policies in advance of a final plan, because they want to sort of understand that in making their sewer and water recommendations. So I had that meeting, and we talked really about a lot of the existing conditions of the sewer and water districts, which information has been and will continue to be integrated into the INA report that you've seen. The information, or the discussion I've had with Mary Beth was, on the corridor plan, was really about schedule. So where are we, first of all, we had to clarify our deliverables versus their deliverables to make sure that the IDA was getting the value they needed, so that they weren't being repetitious of information. Giving them the information we were developing, or committing to give them the information that we're delivering, so that they didn't duplicate that work. And then aligning our schedule in a manner that made the most sense for this process. So that's really, it's a lot of more procedural discussions. We haven't had any discussions with regard, and I don't think we will have any discussions with them regard strategies and policies and all of that. That's not their role. They're not really involved in that discussion. That discussion is happening here. So.
I forgot to mention last time, we're talking about these community meetings, and there was a recommendation actually from a friend of ours here to send out the information with the tax bills, the information about the schedules of the meetings. If we could go ahead and slip that in, because I think that goes out in August. So
Yeah.
folks would.
No, the tax, that's the school tax.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean, the school taxes. So if we could work with the school district and see if we could slip in a mailer for that. They may or may not
Is
agree.
that allowed? I don't know, are we allowed to put anything in with those bills? I guess I'm just being regulatory.
I don't
We
know.
have to separate the town of Montgomery versus all the other people that are in that.
Valley Central
in that
school
Valley
taxes that
Central
don't live in the town of Montgomery, but go to Valley Central School.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, correct.
Does anybody even receive those tax bills anymore? So, no,
Mine are
mine
going
is
to
an
the
escrow, and it goes straight to the escrow.
I
Mine
Mine-
receive them.
Yeah, we receive them.
And then also, so what was discriminatory against renters and people who don't receive the tax
It's true,
bills?
it will be.
It's true.
Yeah.
So on that subject, I was talking to two of the reporters, and if you guys get me the information, I can get them to them to be published in the paper.
So
for the
after we
Times Road Record.
finalize this, we have the dates now, after we finalize this, I think we wanna launch this, I think we wanna issue a press release.
Okay.
And the press release will announce the availability of the survey, and it'll announce the dates for the meetings. And then we're talking about getting printed up the cards.
Yep.
We're gonna get like 1,000 or 2,000 cards handed out to you guys, and you guys are gonna start dropping them wherever you are, every time there's a court board they're gonna go up. And then, it's going to be posted on the town website and social media.
And I think we can put it downstairs in the lobby.
Do we have any obligation to publish it in the public notices section of whatever our newspaper of record is?
There is not that I know any requirement of doing that, but it doesn't hurt to, if that's something. I mean, typically, we like to do an actual article, so we'll send a press release to the local newspapers and we follow up with a call.
I'm just
To
saying,
make sure that
in
they're
addition,
actually-
Just a free permit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's any requirement in this type of meeting for legal public notice. There is for the public hearing we're gonna have in January. That will need to be legally noticed. But if that's something that you guys wanted to, we could certainly do it. It's
I don't
just-
know how many people actually read the public notices though. I mean, an actual article is going to outline, here is where you go to the survey, these are the meetings, it's much more, this is what we're working on with the
Yeah.
town, so
Just
people.
wanna make sure we weren't obligated.
Yeah.
Read that.
Kristen, will the record put it in, like, record online?
I talked to, Hila Wang, and she said she was looking for a print article.
Yeah, I mean, I just read the headlines, and if it's one of them, I'm sure it'll get somebody's eye.
Right?
Probably a lot of people, probably because it's good.
Everything that goes in the print version, I think, ends up on the website. I don't think it's always the other way.
Yeah, I don't think
Yeah.
so
Okay,
either.
okay, good.
We'll follow up, trying to move with her pretty much too, so.
But I just talked to her yesterday about it, so I told her that I would get her the information when it's ready.
So the press release website, the lobby,
Do you
lobby
guys
and the Facebook page.
have a local advertiser? Like in Monroe, we have the Photo News,
We'll use the
Goshen Gazette, or
record and the one in.
Walker Valley Times.
Walker Valley Times, which is like a real full newspaper.
It's a real paper, it comes out once a week.
They have a website too.
I'm sure the villages will be willing to announce those meeting dates at their next meeting.
Okay.
I know.
Maybe we could put it on their websites if you
Yeah.
have the village.
I don't know, I mean, I might have to beg Walden, but, I'm sure the villages will announce it and put it on their website. And if it's okay with everybody else, I'll reach out to the other two villages and ask them to.
Thank you.
That's great.
We're a little bit short on time to get these announcements out. It's going out in their monthly mailings or something.
Yeah.
We're just a little bit more than a month out.
I mean, the Walker Valley Times goes out once a week, National Records Daily, or you mean the paper, or you mean the meetings for the
I
village?
want to do
So
it.
I think you've talked about like the calendars that the villages do.
Right.
Ours is
Oh,
out
okay.
already, cause ours is 2 months, so our next one doesn't come out until August or September. Yeah, maybe.
So is there somebody that would want to work with us on the press release? Or would you sort of trust us to do that?
If you do them way more often than,
I mean, we can put one together and then work with somebody, like a little subcommittee or somebody here, like we're doing with the
yeah.
agricultural. Do you wanna designate somebody for us to work with on the press release?
Well, Faith, if you're gonna do it with the
Yeah.
villages.
Yeah, I do it, I do it
Okay.
with work also, so that's fine.
Because you're right, it does make sense to get it into the papers sooner than later. I think we're okay a month, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, it gets difficult, people wanna plan ahead.
I wanna do that one close by though, cause if I forgot, I read it, I wanted to do it, but I forgot the date's already here, so you probably want to do
Right.
it ahead of time.
2 to
and
3 weeks is
close
probably
to
the
it.
right.
And then you get a second one a couple days before, and I'll
Right.
forget.
Just to remind everybody.
And sometimes they have a what's happening calendar that they maintain, you can get on there sometimes.
So just a question too, looking at the calendar and looking at our benchmarks of what we need to hit through all of this. I'm just concerned that we only have one meeting between now and our first public outreach.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming we're gonna have some time on the agenda the next meeting to say what we're going to do and what we're gonna be assigned to do and our tasks at all of these outreaches.
Yeah, that's what the next meeting is gonna
Yeah,
be for,
okay.
it's gonna be for
Because then I
preparing
was
for the
looking up,
public.
like, we have 4 things that
Mhm.
I'm fine with doing anything, I just need to know what I'm doing, so.
Yeah, understood. And you guys have a lot of public meetings in September. And I think one of the things we had discussed initially, am I out of juice? No, I just want to sleep.
And you're really close, it's Wednesday,
Right,
Saturday,
that's,
Wednesday.
right,
Yeah.
that's why I was looking
Very
at
dense.
the calendar, so I'm like, we have one meeting, and then it's just bam, bam, bam.
Mhm. And that's gonna be the majority of what we're talking about at the next meeting. And then we're looking to wrap up the INA, with our existing conditions report, which will have the outstanding chapter on community services, during September, frankly, because you guys are gonna be very busy with the public outreach. And then I think the idea would be to come back in October with our first vision reports, and then we can go over any of those INA. And the vision reports is where we're gonna go over our vision, goals, and objectives. So that's gonna happen in October. And at that same time, we can wrap up the INA and then start working on the actual plan and policies and recommendations, which you guys already started. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're talking about preservation and areas where we gotta reconsider the zoning. That's kind of like one of the centerpieces of the comp plan, so. All right, so anything else before we get into the public survey? So I wanna, everybody knows Sarah, right? Sarah's working with me. She came up to help out. So it was harder than we thought to go through these comments and revise them. So we hope that we've done a fair to middling job here and we don't have too much more to get through. But, so we talked about the introductory comments. Who are you? The next one, we kind of incorporated two questions into the same question. What is your employment status and do you feel like you're able to work from home? Are the two that we incorporated into one there. Where do you work? I think we whittled down the options on this one. Age is the same. Where do you shop? We whittled down the choices there to villages, town outside villages, or Orange County. Or we'll have another after Orange County. We spent a lot of time over the next several questions trying to whittle this down into succinct questions. And so we asked if asked by somebody contemplating relocation, how would you rate the following? And then we have the qualities there: quietness, housing affordability, access to major highways. We went through them last meeting. What people saw as threats to life in the town. And then the Likert scale questions, which we did whittle down some too, because of what we had in the other questions. So what we ended up with: town has an adequate supply and variety of quality housing. Town has the type of housing that promotes job growth. Elderly are able to remain if they choose. Higher density should remain focused around the villages. Montgomery is a bedroom community for downstate New York City workers. Walpole River is an important recreational asset. Stewart State Forest is important recreational access. The teenage riding his bike, 10 minutes. Hamlet of Coldenham should be cultivated as a true place. We expanded on what that included. Local small businesses are the backbone of our community and superstores should be discouraged. Town needs to attract more casual dining national chain. Access to broadband internet connection is important. And then even if you end up with these 5G cell sites, which we had a picture there.
That's a nicer picture.
That's a better one?
That's a better question.
Yeah. Which policies do you believe are the most important? Choose 5. I'm pretty sure we can do that on SurveyMonkey. That was still a question, but we have those issues that we went over: agricultural preservation, housing affordability, property taxes, environmental conservation, economic development, local convenience, public transit, complete streets, new parks, preservation, rural character, clean energy, flood protection, disaster readiness, and access to open government. What types of recreation would you like added to the town? We made some changes there again. We had worked on the question with the 100-acre farm. It was a 500-acre farm previously. It's now a 100-acre farm, and I went through the numbers in detail. And the basis that I used is a $10 increase to the average homeowner, and this isn't gonna be in the survey, but I wanted to let you guys know where we're coming from. So if we had, and the average homeowner, I think the value was around $270,000. And that includes all types of housing across the town. So the average homeowner, a $10 increase gets you a 20-year bond for approximately $1.4 million.
Did you use the A fund? Where were you grabbing that?
That's a 20-year fund at 1.7% interest.
Well, what tax base are you using?
The entire town. So all, you think that sounds low?
Doesn't sound right, because, I don't have the paperwork in front of me, but our town general fund is what, $2 million? $2 million, and it's a what, around $1.90 or $2 total taxes?
But this
I mean,
is for 10 years.
Yeah, but you're talking every single year, right? You're talking $10 a year for 20 years.
$10 a year to the average homeowner. So your tax rate is per thousand.
Right, per thousand, but just if your general taxes in the A fund are right around $2, pretty close. So now you're saying
$2 per thousand.
Yeah, $2 per thousand.
So it's $2 times 277.
Yeah, but so you're saying you're gonna raise that to 10 every year?
No, I'm saying I'm gonna raise the average to the homeowner. So it's 10 divided by 277.
Oh, so you're saying $10.
So I'm saying the impact on the rate is gonna be about 3.6 cents to the tax rate per thousand, which equals an average increase to a property owner of about $10 on their tax bill for the town.
Did you look up and see what Warwick does?
In terms of the PDR,
Yeah.
And that's to fund how much a year, $1 million?
that was $1.4 million.
At what interest rate?
1.7. So, Town of Warwick did a one-time bond. And it was a townwide bond. I don't know if they got matching funds, they may have from the state. But that's what you would do too, frankly.
Yeah.
So you would take the 1.4 million and then you'd go after PDR grants, which can fund up to 86.1% of, so they'll match up to 86.1 of the total PDR cost. But we used an assumption that they would match 75%. So the town's in for 25 and the state's in for 75% of the development rate, which gives you $5.6 million for the purchase of development rights. And based on, which in follow-up discussions it might be low, we had estimated 450 to 750 acres for $5.6 million. but I'm told that in certain areas of the town, especially in the school district, that might be low. And the reason, the way we got there is, the Willow Hills farm was 2 million for 150 acres. But as I said, I understand that might be low for the cost of.
But if, in reality, if you wanna get it done and you're talking about the town funding 25%, the state funding 75%, I don't believe that's a realistic goal, especially moving forward with the information that's happening now.
What do you mean?
There's no money.
The state, that's what I'm not following, what do you mean?
The state is
there's no money.
75%.
But the state has issues too, that they are based on soils, not necessarily the actual land itself. Like
Well-
Willow Hill might have less admirable soils that might not place them high enough to get the PDR money from the state,
So
so
the
it's just
state
background.
looks for the county to make the recommendation. So right now, you don't have a local ag board,
In the town.
in the town. If you do have a local ag board, you have a local town, and a local farmland protection plan, which can be something that this comp plan acts as. If you have that, the town can directly, apply for PDR funds from ag and markets.
Right, we've done that.
If you don't have the local board and the local plan, you have to go through the county. So the county makes the nominations, and then the state decides who gets the money. I'm sure that the quality of the soils and the location of the district figures into the determination, the quality of the land.
Well, I guess, so, because I just found my sheet, and I know this is pretty close to being right. So to raise $150,000 would be 11 cents a thousand, using last year's assessment. And what did you come up with?
I came up with 3.6 cents.
To raise how much money to put toward the,
I think it was, so 1.4 million, I think it was $86,000, I wanna say, per year.
all right, so,
100,000 is 11 cents.
well, 150,000 is 11 cents.
So my numbers are different than yours, right, by about a factor of probably 30%.
Yeah, because I mean, I got the roll from last year right here, so I mean, it's pretty easy figuring per thousand to figure out what you're gonna raise.
And that's on the entire town, or is it on the
Yeah,
town
this
side?
is last year's roll, like I put in my notes, that they might change this year because we don't know what the assessments are this year, but this is last year's final roll.
Right,
And that's where these numbers that I gave everybody came from. So, I mean, forget about, I didn't go as far to see how you were, but I mean, the 11 cents per thousand to raise 150,000, I'm pretty sure is a good number. And that would be your debt repayment, whatever,
Mhm.
wherever you go or however. you
yeah,
work it.
principal and interest, and,
Right.
right.
And I think that would be subject to permissive referendum also, wouldn't it?
Bonding for purchase of agricultural land?
Well, because you're putting the town in debt.
I have
That's a question for
yeah.
people, but you are putting the future people of the town into.
Yeah, but there's certain things that are and there's certain, right, so I would have to check, you might be right, I suspect you are. For purchase of land,
Yeah.
I think you are. There's certain things you can do without, right, so purchase of equipment and things like that, but I think land, I think at this amount it probably would be. We'll double check that, and we'll double check our numbers in terms of,
And the final roll should be out because it's due July 1. So we should be able to have the final roll for 2020. When I put this out, it was as of July, it wasn't, with all the COVID and everything, I don't know if they had it done or whatever. Right, same to you asked if Dennis was out.
I tried to get it, and they weren't in town hall, so we couldn't get the final roll.
I have a wording question on number 12 also.
Okay.
The question says, and this is confusing. to
Well,
me.
we're still on number 11, right? So, we did change up a couple of other things here. Because the land got smaller. You know, we talked about 50 large homes on 75 acres, preserving 25. Property taxes, we reduced that to 5 per year. Builder purchases regional distribution center and generates 250 trailer box trucks. Helps keep your property taxes steady for the next 10 to 15 years. We used that language instead of saying it would result in a reduction, which I think a lot of people said didn't make sense. New town style development.
I'm sorry, I have a quick thing on the 250 tractor trailers. Is that for a regional distribution center, would that be like an Amazon type? Because the Amazon facility is going to have 1,400 car and truck trips per day. So is that number commensurate? I just want to make sure that.
We didn't try to key it to Amazon.
Yeah. I just want to make sure it's the same
yeah.
ballpark, like order of magnitude.
So how many acres was Sailfish?
147?
Like 180.
180?
Max, I got just a quick question. When you did that, did you go to assessed or taxable?
Market. So we used the market rate, the full value tax rate. We didn't use the assessed tax rate.
Well, yes, that's where our numbers are all screwed up, because you gotta go to the assessment, because that's what's on your tax bill.
Yeah, but when you're talking about a $277,000 home, you're talking about the market. So that's why we used the full value. We didn't.
Yeah,
if
but
I-
then that's why your numbers are cut, because the town is at 65%. You gotta go back to your taxable.
But I think we're ending up at the same thing now. Because if I'm using full value market rate and you're using assessed, that's why I'm about half what you are.
But that's.
Because I'm multiplying it times twice as much
You're putting out the wrong
value.
information, though. The person's tax bill will be twice what you say it is.
No. If you're using assessed value, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. If you're using assessed value at, I think you said 11 cents per thousand.
Yes.
And I'm using market value at 3.6 cents per dollar. My market value is going to be about twice yours.
So you came up with, because I did the math, it would be 11 cents per thousand to raise 150,000, and it would be 14.3 cents to raise 200,000 on your
Okay.
tax bill.
Right, and I said it would take 3.6, which
To raise how much money?
a 3.6 is,
When you say 80.
you're saying it's about 60%, right?
Well, 62, 61.
3.6 divided by, let's say, 0.62. So we're actually at 5.8. So if I'm at 5.8 to raise 86, I think you're at about 6.3 to raise 86. So we're only off by about 0.5 per thousand, half a cent per thousand. And that's exactly where the difference is. It's in you're using assessed rate, I'm using the full market. And I'm using the full market because frankly that, when I went out to Department of Taxation,
But
that's
the
how
full
they report it.
market can change by what your equalization rate is, where your assessment doesn't change.
It will change based on your equalization.
No, your assessment will not change. If your assessed evaluation is 250,000 on your house, and 1 year it's at 50%, so you're saying my house is worth 500,000. The next year it's at 60%, you're saying whatever it's worth. My taxes, that assessment is still gonna be the same multiplied by the rate.
Right, so I can rerun the numbers using the average assessed value.
Yeah, I think, well, what I'm trying to get at is I think it's a lot safer because that is the number that stays the same unless there's a complete revow.
Right.
Which I don't really see happening in the near future. So your assessment is your assessment, then your rates are your rates on your assessment.
Right.
And this would be a town-wide
Yeah.
expense, so equalization rate would not play into it at all, because equalization rate only plays in when you cross districts, school districts, fire districts, and all other things. That's where the equalization rate plays in to change your tax rate.
Or if we're trying to key this to a market value. So I'm gonna have to use an equalization rate to figure out what the average homeowner is, unless I can get from
Well, you
the
can do that
assessor.
through assessment, just keep apples to apples, keep your assessment to your assessment, and this is a town-wide deal, so the equalization rate won't have anything to do with it.
So I got my average home value from the Census Bureau. I have to call your assessor and have him give me the average home value. Assessed, and then I can recalculate it based on that number.
Taxable assessed.
Right.
It even gets, because if you have a veterans,
Senior.
if you have a veterans exemption, another exemption, that all changes. It goes to the final, if you look at this sheet, you got like 3 columns, and the one that means anything when you're doing budgeting is taxable. That's the column you go down.
That's gonna be hard for him to come up with, but we'll give it a shot. Only because there's different types of housing. So, you know, he's gotta figure out, the Census Bureau kinda does, based on the surveys that people give, they figure out, okay, what's the value of your home, or how much rent do you pay? And so, they use that in determining what the average is. With the assessor, he's valuing, like, if you have a farm, right? What's the value of your home? He's gotta separate that somehow, or not include it in the calculation. You know, what's the value of a multifamily or 2-family house, or a 3-family house, which now is commercial, under the assessment code? So, we'll give it a shot, and we'll see. Honestly, I don't think we're gonna talk about orders of magnitude difference. I think we're still gonna come out with, you know, within a 10 to 20% difference. So if it's 1.4 million, maybe we end up at 1.55, right?
Well, I mean, when you're at such a small tax rate, like if you're talking about somebody paying $2 a thousand and you raise it 11 cents, that's a substantial increase in those taxes.
Right. Yes.
So that's where.
But I think you have to tell them, because I don't think most people know what they're paying per thousand assessed value.
But they know what their overall bill is.
That's right, so
And
I think that's why.
you gotta keep apples to apples, so you're gonna say your overall bill is gonna increase by
$10.
X.
And I wanna, yeah, that's where I started. So in this question, it's $10. I wanna tell people, if your real property tax goes up $10, and it's the same conversation of, if it's going up $10 to fund a 20-year bond, it's going up $10 this year and it's never coming down again, right? Even after 20 years, you're not gonna feel that decrease. So, I said it's gonna fund a 20-year bond, but I'm basically telling them, is it worth it for your property tax to go up by $10 if it means we could save this much farmland?
I'm sorry I spent so much time, but my point is, I want it to be correct. So if somebody looks at their tax bill, they will know that, because under that scenario, how can you say that my tax bill and your tax bill is gonna go up the same $10 if my house is worth, if my assessed evaluation is 500 or 250 and yours is 100?
You have to say, yeah, you have to say, the average house is worth X dollars, and its taxes would go up by X dollars. Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a hypothetical survey question that has no meaning. We're not writing a ballot moratorium or policy that needs to be out to 7 decimal places.
No, we're trying to get an idea
Phil,
of,
it's just a hypothetical question.
yeah, about how people feel about issuing bonds. Because ultimately, especially if it's a permissive referendum, you're gonna have to ask the question again. So it's really to get a pulse of people's priorities. How do they weigh farmland preservation against personal tax costs?
I'm just saying we don't need to be out to 7 decimal places on all.
But do you think it should be a percentage or a flat rate number? Because I think to me, a percentage is a more true picture of, because and then that fits into every person's scenario, then a flat rate number that is gonna, it can't be. You take every person in this room, the number's gonna be.
When you go to a car dealership and they're playing a four-square game trying to sell you a car that you can't afford, they always play with the payment number and not with the
Yeah, but
loan
that's
percentage or anything else.
That's the same car. We're talking about
Right.
people who are gonna be paying differently.
I'm just saying, is the way that the public thinks now is they are, this is how much, that they play with the payment number, and they bury the interest rate and the cost of the car and everything else, they're just buying, so it's just, it seems to, it's gonna go up $10 a year.
Well, personally, I'd just rather have a percentage, because I think it's cleaner, and then every person can make their own decision on their own tax bill, what it's gonna cost them.
The only
Instead of
thing,
trying to blanket it.
the only thing I might object to there is your town taxes are such a small percentage of your total taxes. Do we say, assume that everybody is basically town, village, or town outside plus town is relatively the same? Because then we're telling somebody from Montgomery that their taxes are gonna go up the same as somebody.
Well, yeah, because if you do the A fund, that's a true statement.
Right, but nobody understands how much of their tax bill is A fund. They only know that they're paying $6 or $7 or $8 or $10 or $12,000 a year.
And I think the rest of the answers under this are saying like, oh, a new property tax is of $5 a year, or stay steady for 10 to 15 years. I think if we just assign a dollar amount to it, it flows with the rest of the question. They're gonna choose what they would rather see. I hear and totally respect what you're saying, because you're right, I'm not gonna answer this question and say, oh, my taxes are only gonna go up 5 when I realize yours are gonna go up more than mine are, because you have more land than I do.
We can do it both
But we're
ways.
just trying to answer, would I rather see homes built, would I rather see mixed use built, would I rather see a warehouse, or would I rather see land? That's basically what we're asking,
So
what we're
we-
looking for the answer on.
How about I just put it both ways? So I say something like, your town tax bill will go up this %.
Yeah, that's.
Which equals approximately X dollars for the average resident.
Right, townwide taxes, and I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, if people don't understand their bill is that, I don't wanna be, it's their job to understand their tax bill. That's
Some
part of being
people don't even
a-
know.
That's-
Some people have their money
Never seen
in
it.
escrow, they don't even know what they're paying, they only know the bottom line.
But I don't wanna be accused of hoodwinking somebody who might know and say, they drag them and say, what kind of crap is that? You're saying that you're at $10 and the percentage rate is this and mine, cause those people are out there too.
Isn't the problem with the whole thing is that it implies that somehow this is the only portion of your tax bill that's gonna go up in the A fund?
For that purpose.
For that purpose, but if I'm voting for it, let's say, my A fund tax is still gonna go up more than that. I mean, I think this sort of gives the impression.
Actually, no,
Taxes are only gonna go
the
up.
alternative here is we're talking about it in those terms, but the reality is, if you don't do the PDR, and somebody comes in and builds multifamily housing, your taxes are gonna go up a heck of a lot more than if you had the town PDR the land. So it's actually, in that way, and that's really what this is trying to get at, is that it's trying to compare the cost of, look, we can purchase the parkland and it'll cost you $10 a year, or we don't purchase the land, somebody buys it, builds single-family homes, and it costs you $5 per year. It's trying to do that and say, okay, but we could also do ratables, or we could do a mix of commercials and residential, and end up with steady taxes, no increase for a couple of years.
I have a question about that mixed use one, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It says property taxes steady for the next 5 years. Does that include the school taxes because the school taxes go with more residents.
Yeah, it does. I mean,
So could you-
most of those mixed use, projects are pretty tax beneficial.
Should we say that so it mimics the information in the first option? Something like helps keep your property taxes steady for the next 5 years, and the additional homes will not increase your school taxes? Other things.
Well, no, we're talking about your total tax bill, so I think we can put in parentheses when we talk about,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I'll make the first and the third basically parallel,
Okay, thank you.
to say your total tax bill will remain steady. All right. So the next one, I think we have to talk about the issue that Mark raised about the PDR and matches. Because that has been the trend, is the state has matched up to 86% on PDRs. I sort of thought it was being a little bit more conservative to say they'd match 75%.
Well, 75 is what, when we were doing it, what it always was.
That you were doing 25, they were doing 75? And so you're thinking that going forward, it may not be the same, it might be.
Well, and the other thing is the timeliness. I can tell you people in the town of Walk Hill that have been waiting
2 years.
8 and 10 years for this state money to come through, and they're about ready to say it out.
So they were awarded it and it hasn't come?
People have applied multiple times and it's on our way and it never came through.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna have a meaningful program, a real meaningful program, you better think that you're gonna step up to the plate and fund it mainly yourself. And if you do that, if you were ready to fund it, and this is just from me, past experience, but if a municipality was stepping up and funding it 50 to 60%, I think it'd be a lot easier to get the state to piggyback on
Mhm.
maybe that extra 20, because they would see a bigger bang
Right.
for the buck and a lot more hoopla
Yeah.
and banners and everybody coming down shaking hands and stuff.
Mhm.
But if you're gonna wait for them to do 75 in this time, I mean, let's be realistic. This thing is, they're broke.
Right. So
So that would increase these numbers by the 75%?
what it would do is it would decrease the effectiveness. So if you look at,
And you still have to take the issue that you're gonna have people that are willing to do it.
But we're still, we're just trying to get an idea. of
No,
what
right,
they
and I
have to
understand
see.
that,
What
but I
kind
mean-
of your appetite?
right, so I can either double the cost or I can sort of have how we're categorizing.
I like seeing all of its remaining farmland, like, I like that as like an aspirational, like, let's see how much people are willing to pay for that. I think
Mhm.
that's a great aspiration.
So we could increase that to like 280 from 140 for the average person, which is a lot of money, right? Your tax bill goes up $300.
Yeah, but that, like you said, that if it goes up now, is it gonna go up now? Or is it
Right.
gonna go up in
That's
the
right.
future when there's more needs or more
Right.
pressure on
Right.
And what
town
value were
services?
you using on the open land
On the open land.
to figure out, when you're doing the acreage, to figure out how many dollars it would take to buy up a lot of this?
Like you said, Willow Hill was
Two
what,
2
2
million per 150 acres.
I think that's quite high.
Well, if you look on
You
the
think
Orange
that's
County.
too high or too low?
I'm thinking the open ground right now is probably out in the R 8.5, somewhere around between $8,000 and $10,000 an acre.
But you're looking at two different areas. Willow Hill is industrial.
It's
You're
in
talking
the,
about
it's in the sewer district, yeah.
RA.5, you're not apples to apples.
We're talking
Also,
thir-
Willow Hill's got a tremendous amount of floodplain, which is not available.
Up and back?
Well, just just go look at the 100-year floodplain map.
Cause I've walked that farm, and it doesn't, I wouldn't look at the map, but I can tell you that if you wanna look at theirs, I believe theirs might be listed on the Orange County Partnership site, or it was previous.
So
Yeah.
we're kind of balancing though, right? So you're sort of saying that you don't think you're gonna get as much match, but you're saying maybe you're overvaluing how much.
Yeah, 'cause-
So maybe it washes it a little bit in
Yeah.
that way, right?
Well,
And
then
if-
at what point is the land, is some of these places should maybe go into industrial, and some of the other places out in the R8.5 should be more
That's-
agricultural.
that's
And I
sort of
know
a-
that's what
yeah.
this whole
Yeah.
committee's supposed to be talking about.
Which, and we are gonna get to that as soon as we get to the survey.
Let's move a
Yeah.
little faster
For,
through the
for
survey.
question 12 though, I mean, you have the map that's got the overlays of the ag districts
Yes,
on top of industrial, and so I think it would be a quick takeoff for you guys to do a percentage, how much
How much is
farmland
in
is in
I?
RA, how much is in I, and then just do an average, can we just do an average?
oh, there's no more question that it's mostly in the RA.
Would it make sense
There's
to
a
do
good
that
amount in the
average
I,
for
but
you
it's
guys?
still mostly in the RA.
Yeah, but just to come to a number, would
Okay.
you guys be okay with just doing a kind of
Yeah.
average?
we can do that.
Cost per acre, just based on the percent in residential versus industrial?
So we can use 8,000, 8 to 10,000
I mean, as we sit here today, I don't know what
Yeah, makes sense.
tomorrow's gonna bring.
for the RA. And then I think,
10 for a while.
cause,
Locusts,
What?
locusts, what tomorrow's gonna bring.
I think locust fence posts, that's why I'm like, what is locust?
Fine, straight lumber.
Locust trees.
Right? Yeah.
Mine's falling down.
Okay.
Tropical
They were
storm
thinking
yesterday.
insects, right?
Yeah.
Oh, tropical, yeah,
Yeah,
tropical
it's
storm
fine.
yesterday, COVID, and what's next, locusts.
The other thing that I found
And
confusing
that
about.
just, I hate to
this-
keep, but the other thing, if the raw value is 8,000, the purchase value should probably only be about
Right.
6,000, because there
We-
is there
we
is
figured-
residual value there after you do the purchase.
we figured 75% is development rights.
Oh, all right, so if we're saying it's 10, it's 75.
It's 75, yeah, we did do
That's
that.
fair.
Okay.
The other thing that is confusing for me, because I'm not an expert on bonds, is a one-time bond and then $140 per year. Like, is that forever? Is that for the life of the bond?
Well, so that's for the life of the bond, but as we said here, again, taxes never go down. So it's for the bond, but eventually that bond's gonna run out, and it's not like debt service is over, and we're not gonna have other needs at that point.
Just like there wasn't supposed to be tolls on the George Washington Bridge.
There's a throughway.
Right after it was paid for, you weren't supposed to have.
Okay, they're never gonna stop.
So
But I
Cash
think
cow.
though that like, I mean, there's a myth of responsive governance, like people run on reducing taxes, right?
Mhm.
Like that's people's platform on countless political, so I think that in response to that, I think it's important to tie that $140 a year. Like, I know that New York State Lotto doesn't all go to fund education, like, I get it.
Mhm.
But that's the promise of
Right.
Lotto, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that it's important to kind of tie these things in, so
What
it's
if-
apples to apples.
What if I write on the question, if the town were to issue a one-time 20-year bond, would you support any of the following? Yes, I would support a $140 per year increase. to
I
my-
think that makes more sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes it seem like it.
Like there's an end to it.
They actually match.
Yeah, okay. Rather than suggest that after 20 years, the $140 is gonna drop off their tax
Sure.
bill, right? Okay.
I'll always find it at least for $140.
That's right.
It's a lot cheaper.
I refinanced my mortgage and it went down $200. So, not extending the date, but just the lower interest rate, so,
Wow.
yeah, that's over 10 years, so. The next one was, what does the town of Montgomery need more? Some of the language was tweaked, but generally it's a lot of what we talked about last time. we got rid of the duplicative, diagram. I think everybody liked this one more. Do you prefer cluster over conventional? That's the follow-on question. How many hours do you spend a day in a car for all activities before the pandemic? And do you think that was too many? We have the town seal question. Yeah, this was another one that we spent a lot of time on last time, was how do you categorize the increase to your taxes? So we left it open-ended and said significant. So do you believe that the town needs to expand existing water sewer districts or create new districts to include more existing residents, even if it means a significant increase in taxes for residents in those new expanded districts? Do you believe the town needs to spend tax revenue to improve the community's resilience? The town of Montgomery should do its part promoting a cleaner, greener, climate-smart community that takes advantage of the latest energy efficiency practices. Oh, there's an error. Patterns. What type of new businesses would you like to see?
How did you come up with that list? Those were just uses that aren't permitted? Is that the premise behind that?
Between these? I think they were suggested by the original commenter. The person who suggested the
Oh,
question originally
okay.
had these in their list. Is that you, Fred? This is yours? No. I forget where it originated, but
I made the question, but I didn't have any suggestions.
oh, okay. I'm not sure how we got that then. Do you recall?
So we took out, permitted uses, non-permitted, all of that, because it just got to be too confusing of what's permitted, and it was more, these are not really in the town right now, we'd like to see more of them.
Okay, so these are things that are not specifically permitted.
Wedding venue, outdoor wedding venue?
Outdoor wedding venue?
Well, not so much outdoor, you have a choice. Wedding venue facility,
Just a catering facility.
catering, is it there?
No.
No.
It's not.
But aren't they already allowed in the,
It's what would you like to see more of, though?
Catering is in the book, but we have to redefine it.
Okay.
To include wedding venues.
okay.
Over at Spruce Lodge. Remember that?
Yeah.
And then would that play into your amount of gathering too, or not? So isn't there a law on the amount of gathering or not?
There is.
What's
You're
the,
allowed up to so many, I think
what's the cutoff? I don't know.
For public assembly in the building code?
500.
Oh, you're talking about before you have to get a health department?
Yeah, mass gathering.
Mass gathering.
Right.
I think that is 500. I think it's 500, and then the building code is 15 square feet, public assembly. So, if you have a 10,000 square, let's make it easier, 15,000, that's 1,000. So you're talking about 7,500 square feet, you allow 500, and then you gotta go for mass gathering, the health department above that. But I don't know if that includes if you have a multi-room facility like
No, I'm just wondering
Anthony's
out
Pier
there.
9,
I
yeah.
don't, just trying to make sure that
Okay.
everything's cohesive at this point.
Yeah, we could add catering facilities. Is there anybody else? Anybody wants to add to this list? Do you wanna see more of these businesses?
What
Yeah.
barn
Well,
wedding.
that's what catering slash.
Well,
wedding-
Yeah,
I
but
think that's where
a
the
little
definition-
different, isn't it? I mean, I don't mean to make another one, but spruce lodge versus a barn wedding.
Because there's a big demand for it these days.
Well, if,
Right, that's what I'm wondering.
But if you have a venue like that, you may not be just for weddings, so if it's a
Right.
catering facility, so we can handle all types.
So do you do an agricultural catering type facility?
What is Twin Palms? They're doing barn weddings, right?
Yeah. Wait,
Twin Ponds was all under ag and
I
market.
think they are.
yeah, I was about to say, I think you're covered under ag and markets anyway,
Well,
if
they're
you're in the
not catering
district.
it, they're,
If you wanted to put a wedding venue on on an ag district property,
right,
I think that falls under ag tourism,
yeah.
agritourism, which is
I know
now
there's a lot of
protected.
discussion on it.
And we tried to do something with that. There was a lot of angst about that in Mankato, because they already have a lot of the summer camps up there
Oh, jeez.
that are doing events. And,
Easy for him.
Is Angry Orchard doing anything like this now with the
No.
weddings, venues and stuff?
No.
Not now. I
And
know.
on the topic of the catering things, City Winery, are they doing a catering setup? I mean, granted, it's in the village, but are they doing they're doing a wedding
And
and?
there was an article in the paper
Catering
today,
setup?
I guess they just got turned down to do their own concert.
But I think it's because it's COVID, so.
Right, the
you can't
COVID
do
is-
the-
But a
Right,
lot
so
of
for
people
COVID, but
that are
just-
getting married like the barn style weddings.
yeah.
Did
Well,
you-
that's what Corey McConnell's working on.
What?
That's what Corey McConnell is working on. Tom's
Un-
Cove.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I don't think it matters what people think, because I think if you're in an ag district, you basically are allowed to do it.
I'm not sure if he is. But did you see catering in our code? I didn't.
I can't stand it.
I don't think catering is in, so maybe that's something.
Okay,
Catering hall that way.
What does Spruce Lodge fall under then? Is a
They might be grandfathered.
grandfather or?
It's just not gonna work, probably.
I thought I had seen it. It's not on the table?
I don't see it on the table now.
And that's,
There's assembly halls,
and that's where it's.
if that's,
Well,
if that
that's
doesn't
what people
include
use
catering.
fireballs for weddings.
Huh?
People
Well, I
use
think
fireballs for weddings.
I think we've offered other too, so if anybody's doing this, they can write in something we haven't thought about, so like.
What about
Yes.
commercial public recreation use not otherwise permitted? Would that be it or not?
Well, it'd be nice to have it clean.
Right.
And say, spell it right out so we don't have to try to find it.
Yeah.
You know, kind of, there it is.
We can do it.
You know, I probably was thinking when I said that, when I asked that, Fred, is that, you guys have the membership and the social
Mhm.
hall type things, which I always think of in terms of, the Knights of Columbus, or sort of doing Elks Club, doing,
We actually have one in the town, I can't think of one. The village is maybe not in the town.
Okay.
okay, yeah, so we can add catering.
Yeah, I did a word search, there's no catering and there's no wedding on the table.
Okay. Anything else? Businesses? It's okay. It's, that, okay. To the wire here. Let's see, okay, so, following statements deal with the way in which land has been developed over the years. Please indicate whether you agree or disagree with the statements. Commercial industrial development has been located an appropriate distance from neighboring homes and public streets. Commercial industrial development paves too great a portion of lots, and additional green space should be provided. Generally, industrial and commercial uses should be spread out more along roadways. Industrial and commercial sites should be better landscaped, are too tall, especially when bordering residential neighborhoods. Separating land uses in an old-fashioned practice that is not necessary except for the most intensive industrial and distribution type uses. The town has been too restrictive in regulating development. Recent residential communities do not fit into the rural character of the community. What scale of commercial development is appropriate for the town outside of the villages? And we have none, only an occasional corner store, strip mall, along major travel, a lifestyle center, major big box, lifestyle center incorporated into mixed use, a large classic shopping mall near an I-84, and pictures will be provided. So when we do the survey, we're gonna have pictures so people know what we're talking about. We say like a lifestyle center. But basically, it's an outside mall. How would you rate the overall quality of life in the town? And then we have the open-ended questions at the end. What could the town do to improve quality of life? What do you love about living in Montgomery? And is there anything else you want us to know? So with those changes to those few questions that we talked about, everybody's okay with finalizing this? We'll have it for you at the next meeting.
Well, we have it in digital form, like actual Survey Monkey to actually look at how it's gonna be.
Yeah, I think we can do that at this point. We're pretty much there, yeah.
Can you send the URL out so we can look at it ahead of time? Survey
Yeah.
Monkey instead of trying to translate paper to screen?
Sure.
Guys, can you just look at 6? I don't know what makes the difference, it might just be typing. It says on a scale from 1 to 10, with 0 being not important at all. So do you want it 0 to 10 then, or 1 to 10?
Yeah.
There's another typo with the number 17, it says transportation capital of the Northeast in the parenthetical, but on the seal says transportation hub. I'm sure somebody's gonna notice that.
17?
Yeah,
Clean up.
Yeah.
just a little.
Transportation hub, right. Okay.
So what is, could you please refresh us on the schedule for the survey, like, is this a situation where, like, do we need to review it again in a meeting, or we look at it online and then just get it out there?
So,
I'm not sure what people, I just
what-
want this to be in front of people for as long as possible.
So what we were thinking is that we would start this after the next meeting. So on August 19th, we would launch this. We would have the cards printed from you guys. We would have the press releases ready to go, announcing the availability. That basically the day after the next meeting is when you guys are starting to hand out cards, the survey goes online, and the press releases are released.
So could I ask this, then, could we get this finalized and out to everybody prior to the next meeting, so you can submit any typos or any little things you find, so we don't sit here for an hour
So
at
how-
the next meeting and do this?
How long to get the survey monkey done?
Day?
A day,
Yeah.
so you could have it by Friday. So we can get you the survey monkey links out by Friday?
And then if you want to email back anything that you see that's not right, so we could fix it before the next meeting. If we want to launch it at the next meeting, let's not say now we're doing this again. for
There's
the
a
next
draft,
meeting.
right, where we can make it available for
Just
draft, for
certain
like
people,
tests.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So, if that's it, let's go to what we talked about last meeting. And everything is in the south end except for that one industrial district up there. Everything else ended up sort of in the south end of the town, which I think is probably expected. We asked you where you felt that existing zoning did not reflect or was not appropriate based on how you would like land to be developed in the future. Then we asked you also to identify what parcels should be priority preservation to remain undeveloped into the future. Those were your green dots. So we had the red dots where we want to look at the zoning, and we have the green dots where we want to potentially prioritize preservation. We took those and compiled tables. So we'll start with which is why we're continuing the conversation tonight. So, everybody sees, we'll start with preservation priorities. We asked you to talk about where you thought the land was. We gave you all 6 dots, I think, and this is what we ended up with. So number 1 is this parcel here along Coldenham Road. It's parcel 26.1-24. It's a 42-acre parcel in the RA.5, currently used for agriculture. I don't know if anybody knows exactly what farm that is, but I could certainly bring it up on the aerial if necessary. Anybody have any input or thoughts on that?
Where is it? Is it number 1?
That's number 1 we're talking about.
So what, where, yeah, whose farm is
Is
it?
that Colden Spring? Is that Jocelyn?
Does anybody?
They're the ones that put up all that new fencing, right?
Yeah, that's
So
Jocelyn.
that's Walt Schneider's old farm?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, that's Colden
Schneider's.
Spring.
Yeah, they put up a lot of money in new fencing, the
With
4x5
horses.
animal wire with electric or something along the top.
Mhm.
What did we call it? What farm?
Colden Spring.
Holden Spring?
They board horses.
Okay. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and it's a nice piece of land.
Mhm.
They are actively farming it.
Okay. Number 2 is the area, is that,
That's the right farm,
the right farm?
I think. If that's on Browns Road.
Looks like it.
417K.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are, I just talked to her today actually, and they're considering pursuing it. Cause she's just got a lot of other things going on. They're doing vegetables and they're looking at it. Right now, they're cleaning up the place significantly.
Was that Bigfoot's farm? The guy used to sell the vegetables out there when it was called Bigfoot.
At the end of Browns
Farm?
Road on
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
That's his nickname.
Yeah, that was his nickname.
John Olson, Alfie Olson.
Yeah,
That's
might have been
Olson,
Al.
Alfie's Olson's old farm.
That's-
And
Old farm, the former.
the former, now
Now
Roger
Wright's
and
farm.
Lynette Wright own it, and they've been clearing the barns down piece by piece and restoring it back to farmland, so I would definitely keep that as a suggested location. And usually historically, wasn't it, Mark, that when they like to do PDR lots, they like to have them contiguous or nearby other PDR farms that also ranks and gives points
Yeah.
in the process. So, that kind of goes to number 4, but.
Is that-
Okay, everybody, any other input on that one? Okay, number 3.
I think that's my farm.
That's the Brown farm.
So it's currently
I'm
in the
fine.
industrial zone.
You're not R 8.5?
No, I am RA.45, but
So that's
Lataki
number-
Farm is industrial.
That's Lataki?
That's number 4, right?
I think that's, number 4,
The Taki farm
LA,
is number 3 or number 4?
4,
And number 3 is Brown?
yes.
Yeah, but 3 is in the industrial zone too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but should
not
have been-
correct.
The dot may be in the wrong spot. I have to put a dot. This is really a map, this is a working map for you guys. I don't know if we're gonna end up publishing this in the plan.
It's hard to read when you zoom in, but it looks like 3 should be shifted to the left.
Okay,
And that's in the RA2 zone. I know my farm is.
So-
4 is in the industrial zone.
Brown farm is vegetables, produce, livestock?
We do livestock,
Livestock,
beef, cows, roaster chickens, eggs,
okay.
replacement.
And Lataki is
Hey,
Vacant.
A?
if that's what you call it, they're not actively farming it, they didn't last year either.
Okay.
But it is in the industrial zone.
And any further comment on those?
So the Taki farm is actually zoned industrial back in the day, that they thought that Stone Castle was gonna be Browns Road. The Takis changed the zoning to be industrial for that purpose, to gain that amount of the extra value of the property. But there's no access to a state
Stone
road.
Castle, yeah.
Yeah. And those, the Timbrook goes straight through there. That's part of the big drainage area for the Timbrook.
Mhm.
There's all wetlands back there along the river. There's a lot of reasons.
But, and going back to what I said before with the contiguous land parcels, you can go from the Wright farm, which is number 2, adjoins the Lataki farm, which is number 4, adjoins my farm, which is number 3. And it actually continues, that's the line of the agricultural district, what we call it, like the last line of defense before you get to the industrial area of Stone Castle. And then for my farm, it goes to, a horse farm goes to Chet Dunn's, it continues the line of farming around that border of the town. Just for reference.
Okay. Anybody else?
I mean, I wasn't here last week, but I mean, I guess another focus would be on PDR farms that are already done.
Mm-hmm.
So that would get you up there next to Roebuck, next to Menendez, and then those ones on Hill Avenue. And then Roebuck Farm is right on the river also, just like Menendez.
You're talking about up here, right?
Yeah,
This is
north
Menendez.
of Walden.
And Roebuck is this one, like here, right?
And where's the river?
This is the river.
And if you go to Ulster County, if you
That's
get up to
Menendez
Ulster
on the
County,
south.
Menendez borders Ulster County, then you just come down, and then Roebuck borders.
Is that Donnelly Road, Roebuck?
Well, Roebuck is between Donnelly and Menendez.
Okay, because
Roebuck
Donnelly is
down
also
near that
preserved,
bend.
right?
Well, there's a conservation.
Okay. All right, so you want to nominate this area?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying that it's, you maybe, if you're gonna talk about critical mass, let's talk about critical mass we already have.
So is
It's
there
already
a,
bought and paid for.
is there a farm up there that sort of serves that?
Well, Menendez is protected.
Right.
Mhm.
Roebuck is in between Menendez and Donnelly.
And is protected or is not yet?
Roebuck is not.
So Roebuck might be one.
Phelps protected,
No.
Mark? No?
And then, you're right, then if you came down again, you would come down closer on the riverside of Phelps is there.
And is there a name for that one?
Well, it'd be Phelps, and that would border
Riverside
Donnelly
Farm.
on the south side
Mhm.
and Roebuck on the north side.
Right, right.
Okay. I mean, that seems to be critical mass
And
and
if you
watershed
go-
protection.
If you go over a little farther, then you would get to Zelstra, Hoekstra. There's some ground out in there. It is, now they're gonna, I don't know if people are interested in it or not, but you've got the critical mass already there.
So there it makes sense from probably an agricultural standpoint and from a ecological standpoint.
And I also don't wanna throw water on the campfire, but it's gotta kind of be said that you're, if you're talking about in that neck of the woods along 17K, outside of the town of Newburgh, is that property really gonna be the farmland, or are you gonna go out into where the farmland already is really being farmed?
Well, I think in terms of farmland protection, we also, because the other map that was here last week was where we thought things were scenic. So you want to preserve the view and where you want to preserve So vistas, so you got a scenic road, you wanna preserve that road as scenic, but you also wanna preserve a view of something, right? So people talk about, things that they like to look at, as opposed to where you're looking from. And, so that talks about also a goal for preservation, is if you have the farms at the north end of the town, they're not contributing to the character of people entering the town. So there's a little bit of balance.
They're coming from the north.
Well, I was gonna say, if you're entering the town from that side.
I think most people do enter.
Or if you're going down the rail trail, or you're going, And I mean, that's the other thing, if they're gonna preserve a lot of these farms, they're gonna be big lots and parcels, where if you're gonna preserve the farm, you're gonna be going back, if it's a decent farm, you're gonna be going back off the road where nobody sees anything,
Mhm.
except farmland.
Right.
Because that's where you need the critical mass to make the thing work. Because you can't be driving up and down the road with equipment to little bits and pieces of ground and think you're gonna make any money.
Well,
You don't make any money when your machinery's on the road, all you're doing is increasing your liabilities.
Yeah, but there's a lot of, I missed the beginning part of this conversation, but there's also a lot of these niche markets, these smaller size farms that are popping up too. In addition to the larger scale farming, people are making more, like vegetable farming, more intensive farming on smaller tracts of land. The bigger tracts of land, there isn't that many available.
Right.
I was surprised nobody, so people identified this area here as an important vista, sort of coming west on Route 52.
Yeah.
And somebody identified this area here where the Dwar Kill is, and I think there's some kind of preserve here in that area.
There's been a scenic overlay in there.
In this area, right?
And there's very little scenic area in the town of Montgomery,
Mhm.
on 52 when you leave Outward Corners. And actually, the one subdivision on the hill where it is, Land Trust bought the property behind. They put 4 or 5 houses out along the road, but they left like a lot out so you could still see the Shongle Mountain.
Right.
Mhm.
They're
So
close
you're
to-
still with you. But there isn't a lot of real scenic area along that road.
Mm-hmm.
There is, that's the stretch.
But
That
this-
was in a scenic byway.
This is a farm here, right? Like
That's Deerfield, if you're going up.
Yeah.
this here.
That's Deerfield and, Angry Orchard, that's where you're all are.
Angry Orchard, that, just
This
up
is
from the
this
intersection,
is
yes.
Angry Orchard.
Mhm.
But when
And
I,
then you go a little farther north, you have John Walk County Line Farm.
this one here?
No, go up.
North,
Up in
on
Charles
the
Road.
coast.
Oh, okay, up here.
Well, and if you go the other way, you got Carl Ballback, who's right on the corner of,
Just up from Angry Orchard.
Yeah, Ballback has the last piece of farm in the town going west on 50.
but his buildings are in Crawford.
Buildings in Crawford, Lansing, some of it.
Well, yeah, anything on, because Flurry Road is the cutoff.
But nobody identified any of this area as priority for preservation, which was interesting. So scenic,
We don't go out there.
but maybe because people just don't think the
There's not a
pressure's
lot of
there?
land that's
There's
not
not a
developed.
lot of scenic area available there,
Mm-hmm,
to preserve, and already is,
It's already developed.
okay.
yeah.
All right. Getting back to the list, 5. This is right in the industrial area. I assume this is the property that is this is the county-owned property right
Mhm.
here.
The left side of 5.
The left side of 5 is the county, so this is,
Oh, no, the
No,
left side of that
is-
parcel,
all
5
five is
parcel.
ours.
So have you guys heard about the speculation about the county property that's going around? Like, there's, the Orange County Partnership had like a news article that went out, it was published in a couple of newspapers about a warehouse developer that wants to come in, a new spec warehouse on a parcel of land that is a certain acreage. And folks have been trying to figure out, on 17K, folks have been trying to figure out what it is, and they think it's the county property that's being like evaluated for development.
For a
Yeah.
1.3 million square foot warehouse.
Well, they said 127 acres, but they didn't say what road it was on in her newsletter.
Yeah. So I think that,
They didn't say 17K?
Nope. It listed the name of the developer,
right,
Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn.
so I think there's like, I know that we've been talking a lot about, when we did our tour and when we talked about the county property and like its old vision for potential parkland, 4-H, all that stuff. It's right across from the Farmers Museum. I mean, that's a piece of land that I think that the community would notice if it was
Right.
gone. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Even though it's not necessarily fully utilized right now.
Karina,
Right, it's got a big
who
project.
asked me about the deed for that? Somebody wanted to know if there were any kind of restrictions in the deed or if it was part and parcel of the house.
Yeah, I
When
think
the
there's been a
Hills
lot of
gave it to
different-
the county.
I heard of a big warehouse, but it was on Hefner.
Hefner's?
Down there. at the airport.
Down the road?
The airport had it.
Yeah.
That's 11.
Which is 9 and 10 on this map.
Which has been up for discussion in the past for
Right.
development.
But, okay, but sticking at number 5, there
Right.
is a 50-acre, I think it's a 50-acre cornfield that's there.
Yeah, and that's why the property card says contact Orange County Parks,
Right.
because they must do the farm leases.
They absolutely do, they lease out that field
Why
to
there
a
is a
farmer.
lot of-
So that 5 is the county property then we're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yeah.
We're not talking about something other than the county property?
No.
No,
No,
it's
but
not.
it is, but it is.
It's my
zoned-
backyard, literally, so that's why I got
It is
it.
zoned industrial.
Skin in this game.
But it's
Okay.
before the house, so it's-
The little green blobs down at 7 o'clock off of there is
You know
my
what
property.
it is, there's one swamp
Yeah, yeah,
there,
yeah.
and then there's the gate.
You're going up over the hill.
Yeah, there's a.
And the reason behind it, that was zoned industrial in 1988, was because the plan was, at the time, was to make a service road on the north side of 84, all the way from Barron Road, or even all the way up to 208, all the way down to where Drury Lane is now. So that was gonna open that off, because it'd be a service road to all the warehouses on the north side of the service road.
And that was in the 2010 plan too, I thought, right?
It was all cut and paste from 1988.
Yeah, right.
So,
But the question was whether or not when the Hills gave the land to the county, did they specify the use of that part, of the parcel along with the house? So nobody really knows.
so the question is this, an appropriate area for priority preservation?
It sounds like for
Absolutely.
a couple of reasons, like, is it, can it be developed, like what's the county restrictions on it, and then also, you know, I think personally, I think because of it's adjacent to the farm museum, and it's on that entrance corridor along 17K into the town.
But the
That's-
parcel next to it belongs to Tracy Cosmos, and that's industrial. So that's next to number 518.
Anybody else? Sweet, 15 minutes left. I know, it goes quick, right?
She talks too much, she said that she talks too much.
So, all right, so number 6 is the Hefner Farm off of Goodwin, I think,
No, 6 is,
right? That's off of Goodwill for sure.
oh,
It's near,
yeah.
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 I don't think they mean the pack, Vistamore, I don't think that's what that's intending.
And we had identified that previously as a place where, like, it, maybe it was grandfathered in, like, the current use is out of alignment with zoning. It's permitted use, I think we had talked about that in one of the meetings.
The OB zone there,
Yeah.
yeah, because there was a discussion that eventually the shopping area would continue,
Right.
right? Down Old Mill County.
We're talking about the same piece of property they're talking about. So if you're already through, 84 would have been there, and that's.
It's outside of the RA3, it's kind of south of the RA3.
No, I'm looking at an old map.
Oh, okay. Anybody have any comment on this, number 6?
Well, I think that OB district has to be looked at. Something's gotta get, some changes gotta get done there, because it's just not conducive to anything really, I don't think, in today's day and age.
That was another 1988 special where they're looking at putting the North Side Service Road from 208 all the way down to 416 and 211.
And I also think, and obviously I wasn't there, but I think the OB was a good way to make sure that it wasn't I-1.
It was a transition zone.
Right.
Transition from
And it was
residential
just
to the heavy.
So you didn't get the I-1 right up against the
Yeah.
village. Yeah.
And I mean, that OB is, and the funny thing is agriculture is not allowed in the OB.
It's a farm.
What?
It's a farm.
Right, and even the conservation easement on Doc Kelly's is in the OB,
Right?
right?
Yeah.
So 7 is the farm north of Canning Road, right?
I think that's also, there's also some residences over there too. There's houses right along.
There's
both-
houses on either
Yeah.
end.
Hefner's Farm.
Yeah.
That's part of Hefner's Farm, which is part of where 9, 10, and 11 are. It's all the same landowner.
7 is Hefner's, it's like one field, right, I think? It's accessed about halfway down Canning Road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
might be fields off 416 too, but.
Okay. Any comment on that one? Number 8, is that the Willow Mills farm? Willow Hills?
No, what?
Or is that north of the Willow Hills?
It might be part of it.
No, isn't that Aberdeen? Number 8?
The other side of Benign Bridge, right?
Yeah, isn't that Aberdeen Horse Farm?
It's a horse farm.
Yeah,
Aberdeen.
Willow Hill.
That's
That's
Willow
Willow
Hill.
Hill? Okay. So that already received a grant. So that's
That, so the county did that?
it's in process, as I understand it. Orange County Land Trust did it. They got a different grant, it's not a PDR. It's from Ag and Markets, but it's funded by the Environmental Protection Fund.
What is a PDR?
It's a PDR, but it's 100% grant.
But at the end of the day, when the dust settles, I don't care who gave the money, it's a PDR.
It's a PDR.
That's what I thought they did, but nobody confirmed that.
But I don't know that it's finalized.
It was for sale on the Orange County Partnership website too.
I think that Orange County has from what I read online, Orange County has the award and they're working with the landowner on the easement agreements, is what it says on the webpage.
There's another.
So that's the horse farm.
Yeah, well, that's Willow Hills, a horse farm, it's gorgeous.
But those are the 2 women who came to the
Yes.
board meeting
Yes.
that night?
Spoke against the moratorium.
Yeah.
That was Denise and Annette.
So 9 and 10 is the Hefner farm, right?
Well, is all of 9 or?
I'm not sure where.
I don't know why there were 2 dots, we just
Yeah,
assumed there were
yeah.
2 people that put them down, because I
Well,
think
that'd
it's.
be 2 different, all right, but it's by 2 different sections, lot to lot.
Well, they go up and behind there, yeah.
But they have to, if you go up Dunn Road, they have to farm there, but if you go around the airport in, they have that field there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's both
That's
out
all
there.
Yeah.
11 looks like the property that's actually before the planning board right now, right? On the
I
warehouse?
believe they were, I would say they were supposed to be on the same parcel, not on that one.
They're all supposed to be the Hefner farm, pretty much? Okay. 1911.
I know the village, because of proposed warehouse development just inside of the village line right over there, that was one of the things that spurred the village of Montgomery's moratorium that is currently in place.
Okay.
All of if you look at the aerial, there's a bunch of trees, it's all wooded, there's some wetlands back there. That whole area, you go down, Hefner's Farm Road, they were gonna have to have shared access to get back to where the warehouse location.
Okay.
That was in preliminary development design.
Okay.
That area back there. So there's these, there might be, some contingency
we're just basically talking about the area regardless of ownership.
Sure, yeah.
Between the village and the river north of the airport. So 12 is the farm along the Kaisertown.
Kaisertown.
Is that the Willie farm?
There's a bunch
It
of
could be
farms.
Willie, it could be the, who bought the old Powell farm?
There's land in there.
Yes, and the nice garden doors.
Vassapoli.
Mhm.
Vassapoli.
Yeah, because you got
He's got a
Vassapoli,
piece
Willie.
on
You know how to spell that?
What, yeah.
You know how to spell that?
W-I-L-L-E.
Just how it sounds.
Vassapoli.
Vasa, V-A-S-A,
Yeah.
P-O-L-I, I think.
Yeah,
Vassapoli, okay.
I think he has a PPR, doesn't he, Fred?
I'm not sure.
I remember that discussion was from a long time ago.
13 is a horse farm there.
That's garage, right?
What?
Eugene.
Yeah, we'll say that after the weekend.
Across the street, Benedict
What?
You won't forget it.
Yeah, yeah.
I missed it.
Frogs.
Garage.
Eugene and Steve Rob, the twins.
Okay. I think that's all of
They're
them.
good people.
It's 7:25. Do we want to hold the discussion of the red dots? I think we kind of have to,
So
right?
that's a big discussion.
Yeah. Guys, this is in the folder. Please go through the red dots and let's, this is in the folder as of this, today. This is not,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
for this meeting.
No, I haven't.
We put it in today.
So you,
Yeah.
okay, so this line right here would be R3.
So it's now in the folder. Please review them. I don't think we're gonna have time to discuss them next meeting, because we have a lot to go over in advance of preparing for our public outreach. But I think this is probably something we can pick up, in October. And I think frankly, we may hear a lot from the public on some of those issues anyway. Unless you guys feel like we need to meet again before October. Because we're meeting 3 times for workshops in September.
We could probably figure out here what the public says and incorporate that with our comments in October.
Yeah. It might be good to have this discussion once rather than twice.
And what about that, did we do that historic, or were we gonna discuss that?
No, the INA will be talked about, if you want to do what we did with the other INAs, if you want to review it, and then you can have any questions at the next meeting rather than going through it
Okay.
piece by piece.
I don't know, did you need any more information for that? Because all I did was edit what you had, I didn't really add stuff.
I'm sure there's plenty more for you to give, but I want to keep it, bite-sized. They're going to be assembled, so we're going to incorporate all your comments, make corrections, and then there's going to be an existing conditions report that's going to be issued in October. And that's going to have the build-out analysis.
Build out now?
October. Yeah, if we can get it to the board beforehand in September, we'll do that. And give you guys more time to go through it. But remember,
I know, I'd like.
our next meeting where we're discussing things like this is gonna be in October, after next, in 2 weeks, in August. It's gonna be in October, we're not meeting in September in this capacity.
So these are gonna become the basis of the comprehensive plan, right, the existing conditions?
The existing conditions will either be part of the comprehensive plan or it'll be made into like a volume 2 type thing. Depends. Some communities don't like to weigh down their comp plan with a lot of existing conditions. Others like to have it as the basis up front. So a lot of it has to do with how much there is in the policy section of the plan. The bigger that gets, the more likely that's gonna end up in volume 2.
Right.
So.
talk about the view shed stuff, but I don't know when you wanna do that.
That is in the INA, so we'll be talking about that next meeting. Asking the CPC members to come with any questions or comments. We have revised the scenic and historic report. I can send that to you if
Okay.
you want to comment on a revised report.
Sure, sure.
There was a lot of trying to go through Chris and the National Register website and the different reports to figure out what's going on where. And
I know, well, I told you, my house is on Chris, and I'm like, what?
You're the 54 Gladys, so.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, what?
I think it was supposed to be 98.
No, it was both,
It was both?
yeah.
Because it's not in the report that they say nominated that, it doesn't appear. And I beat Bonafide report, so. But so, and then the other thing I figured out is that second Maybrook property is in Hamptonburg. Which is why it wasn't showing up on the Chris report.
Part of Maybrook is Hamptonburg.
Yeah, and that was the row somebody house.
Oh, that's the one down on 208?
It's on 208 heading,
South,
heading,
across from Otter Kill Road. And that house actually belongs to the Orange County Historical Society.
I'm not sure that's the one they're talking about. The one they're talking about is like right around here,
Where's your,
I thought.
well, is that 208 South?
It's north of 208.
Yeah. And it borders, Stewart Bufferland is behind it?
Yeah,
And the parking area for Stewart Bufferland is right near it?
yeah, I think so.
And they sell potatoes? Yeah, that's the row.
Okay, that's the row house, yeah. Okay.
That belongs to Orange County Historical Society.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Okay, so any other questions, or I'll ask for a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned?
Roger, second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.